the leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Alright folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
The wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely.
Get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines on K98.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage. Over.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, everybody? Gene Baradelli here, rocking it solo for our first ever live show on Spreaker. Yes, folks, we are now independent. Don't have any strings on me no more. Gonna be a great show tonight. And listen, I gotta really talk about the independence of coming to Spreaker for a second. For those of you listening out there, I can finally mention all the networks that we're on, including WNJC 1360 AM, Philadelphia's Renaissance Station, K98 Talk, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, Red State Talk Radio. I know I'm forgetting one, and that's you, Pundit Press Radio and Sackheads Radio. Thanks for carrying behind enemy lines. We really appreciate it. And that's the first time I've ever been able to mention all of our affiliates and all the places that distribute behind enemy lines from the People's Republic of New York City. I really appreciate the support, the love over the past few weeks and months, and gosh, it's been years. And as we move on to this new venture of being a little more independent, being able to say what we want, being able to do what we want, when we want, all that fun stuff, it's gonna get a lot better for you, our fans, because we've been bringing you a lot more of the great content that we've been bringing you over the years. And tonight's show will be no exception. Tonight we're going to be talking about a couple different things. Obviously, you probably know already what they are. We're going to be talking about the tragedies. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. The tragedies that occurred in France, in Paris. The resilience of the Parisian people. The fire that we've seen from their government and their decisive action against ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call them. There's so many different names now, I don't even know what to call them anymore. We're going to be talking about that during the show, of course. We're going to be talking about the loony left's reactionary, knee-jerk lunacy that they've been talking about, like how to connect the NRA and Republicans to ISIS. Only the loony left folks can come up with something like that. We will then transition, talking about, of course, President Obama's speech at the G20, the press conference he had there, the press reaction to that, which, by the way, folks, to me, quite surprising. You had some major mainstream networks, heavens be, actually criticize Barack Obama and his approach to dealing with a policy issue. Shocking, I know. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about also taking it away from the perspective of terrorism abroad. We'll come back home and we'll talk to former Oklahoma Congressman J.C. Watts about policies within the Obama administration that shows once again that Obama is, as we say in the title of the show, hopelessly unchanged from where he was when he first came to office, trying to make all these fundamental changes to American political culture and society. Thanks, but no thanks. We're kind of happy the way we are. We'll be getting into that, which of course what we're talking about, and JC will get into this during the interview, is the Obama administration's overreach, once again, through the administration of the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. Then we're going to shift it back to kind of a mix of local, national, international news. Well, of course, we're talking about the refugee crisis from Syria. A couple of differing points of view on that. I think you're going to be surprised with my point of view on this, folks. It's not as extreme as you think, I don't think. Yes, we have to be compassionate, but we also have to be responsible. We'll get into that a little later. But first, let's get right into it. Obviously, what happened in Paris this past week, a tragedy that I think Shepard Smith kind of Fox News kind of put it best. Paris and France woke up to a new world after this tragedy had happened outside the soccer stadium, outside Bataclan. Horrible terrorist tactics. Oh my God, the loss of life. When you see the graphic photos, folks. Now, and you know what? I don't think enough of us have seen the real, raw nature of terrorism. We're shielded by it from the media. We'll see those photos one day, the day that it happens usually, and then we'll forget it. I'm talking about the photos of the bodies on the ground, blood everywhere, the crime scene, as it were. We don't get exposed to that a lot. Even in our even in movie and television and portraying terror, you don't really see that. What you see is the cleaned up, edited version. But let me tell you something. Nothing impacts people more than seeing what's real. And when I saw the photos of the grisly, graphic, ghastly scene at Bataclan, blood on the floor, dead bodies strewn on the floor with flagrant disregard for human life. Oh my goodness. People like to think that evil doesn't exist in the world. People like to go about their day. They think they got a good beat on things. They think they have their routine. Everything goes according to plan. I'm going to go to this concert. Next thing you know, your life changes and the world changes. People need to understand this, and I think at least that night we all around the world got a taste of that. I mean, being from the People's Republic of New York City, of course we have a taste of that from the September 11th attacks. Of course we know exactly what Paris is going through. We know the fear, the uncertainty, the on-edge moments of we don't know what's going to happen next, the state of awareness around you, the hyper-awareness of what's going on around you. It takes your breath away. The energy that you put forth individually and collectively after something like that happens. Wow. It's one of those singular moments that I hope nobody ever has to go through in their life, what we went through, at least in my family, in families here in New York City, and what people are going through right now in Paris. We all know what happened, but let's just take a quick little recap here. And by the way, while we're talking about this recap, let's not forget that on the same day that this happened, President Barack Obama was on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos, that credible journalist that he is, How does a man who worked in government and was basically a spin doctor and a mouthpiece for a Democratic president get considered qualified to report news adequately and fairly and impartially and as it is, not as he wishes it to be? But let's put that aside for a second. Talking to George Stephanopoulos, saying that ISIS is contained. The JV squad is back in the locker room. We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about them. We're doing our job. Everything's A-OK, folks. And then mere hours later, this happens. Let's just think about that for a moment. Take a listen to this.
But ISIS is gaining strength, aren't they?
Well, I don't think they're gaining strength. What is true is that from the start, our goal has been first to contain, and we have contained them.
The death toll from those attacks, at least 120 people dead, by far the deadliest such attacks in France.
And we have contained them.
According to police sources, one, maybe both, were detonated by suicide bombers wearing belts packed with explosives.
And we have contained them.
Some of them were dead, some others were very badly wounded, but it was a bloodbath.
And we have contained them.
Francis Hollande says Paris attacks were committed by the Islamic State.
And we have contained them.
He said, quote, "The analogy we use around here sometimes, and I think is accurate, is if a JV team puts on Lakers uniforms, that doesn't make them Kobe Bryant." Just how badly did President Obama underestimate the threat of ISIS?
Pretty badly, if you ask me. Complacency is the breeding ground of bad behavior. Think about with your children. When you're complacent in dealing with disciplining your children, what happens? They get more unruly. When you are complacent in disciplining and maintaining order in your employment life, what happens? Things get lax, bad habits develop, bad things happen. Same thing here. This is not a difficult concept. This isn't even a concept of governing. This is a concept of human nature. If you are complacent, bad things develop. And that's exactly what happened here when President Obama is calling out the JV squad. Sorry, Mr. President, but whether or not they were the JV squad, they are now more than just a regional terror threat. They are a full-on terror threat, a worldwide terror threat. And by the way, they have been for some time now. You just haven't recognized it, and you've allowed them to become more emboldened. They hold territory. They hold another country's territory and have set up shop. Come on. Imagine that happening in the United States of America. A group comes in, takes over a part of Utah. Sorry, Utah, I'm using it as an example. Just bear with me for a minute. Takes over a part of Utah and says, this is ours, you can't have it. No, I'm not talking about Family Guy, and I'm not talking about, what Peter Griffin did with his house. I'm just talking about an armed group of fanatical thugs marches into Salt Lake City and says, this is now ours, and they defend it with force. They hold people against their will. They install their own laws. They kill people summarily and en masse and arbitrarily, at least to the outside world. Just imagine that, folks. This is happening in another country, a country that, again, let's not go too far back into history, but President Obama left unattended because he wanted to score political points about pulling out of the Middle East. Mistake upon mistake upon mistake. And now he's starting to feel the pressure about it, even from his own people with being the press. Take a listen to this, folks. Here's a little compilation put together by the Washington Free Beacon. Full credit to them, by the way. They put together some of the best cut audio I've ever heard. I mean, we use them for our Al Sharpton breaks and everything. This is from Washington Free Beacon. I take no credit for this one whatsoever. Take a listen to the pressure that Obama's under.
The terrible events in Paris were obviously a terrible and sickening setback. The United States, in partnership with our coalition, is going to remain relentless on all fronts. We have the right strategy, and we're going to see it through. So with that, I'm going to take some questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. 129 people were killed in Paris on Friday night. Is it in time for your strategy to change?
Have you underestimated their abilities?
If I could ask you to address your critics who say that your reluctance to enter another Middle East war makes the United States weaker and emboldens our enemies.
With respect to the broader issue of my critics, folks want to pop off and have opinions about what they think they would do, present a specific plan. I don't think I've shown hesitation to act. But what I'm not interested in doing is posing or pursuing some notion of American leadership or America winning or whatever other slogans they come up with. I'm too busy for that.
This is an organization that you once described as a JV team that evolved into a force that has now occupied territory in Iraq and Syria and is now able to use that safe haven to launch attacks in other parts of the world. How is that not underestimating their capabilities?
Well, Jim, I just spent the last three questions answering that very question. I don't know what more you want me to add.
It's been more than a year now. ISIS's capabilities seem to be expanding. Do you think you really understand this enemy well enough to defeat them and to protect the homeland?
All right, so this is another variation on the same question. Let me try it one last time.
Oh, the pressure. Oh, the shame. The president can't even get love from his own people anymore. Mainstream media is calling him out on his... How would you describe it, folks? I would describe it as lackadaisical, complacent, almost even petulant behavior from the President of the United States, unwilling to admit a mistake, unwilling to change course, hopelessly unchanged. Doesn't matter how many people died. Doesn't matter what happened in France. We are doing the right thing. And if one of my critics, he was more concerned about his critics, folks, than he was about examining his strategy with the media. And if one of you people think that you have a better idea, I want to hear it. Doesn't that sound like a man without a plan? Well, if you think you can do something better than what I'm doing, go ahead. And, does he really have a plan? He didn't sound like it to me. He sounded like someone just exasperated by the mere notion of being questioned. How dare you ask a question of me 3 times that I refused to answer the first time? The arrogance, the audacity, if you will, of Obama. So what was the press looking for? You know what? Let's let them talk about it. Here's a compilation I put together from different compilations I found. Different media reaction, and from Bill Hemmer and Christiane Amanpour of Fox News and CNN, respectively. I think there's someone from the New York Times. The New York Times in there as well. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it. You listen to it and you tell me.
And I was struck by how defensive he was, how much he's paying attention to his political critics. He answered about 6 or 7 specific charges or ideas that various critics of him, presidential candidate critics or otherwise, have made, and he used them as straw man. I was surprised by his tone. I was surprised by the defensiveness.
He said something that was pretty incredible, according to many of the military experts here and around the world who I've spoken to, that our strategy is working. People do not believe that to be the case. The only strategy that's working is the strategy that he tends to dismiss, and that's the ground troop strategy.
It's all very well to say the strategy is working, but it doesn't look like it's working when 130 people have just been killed at random in clubs and restaurants and the streets of Paris. And it seems to me that after this, we got it wrong. We said that ISIS was a regional threat. It's not. It's a global threat.
If you were waiting to hear a U.S. president say, "I feel your pain," or if you were waiting to hear a U.S. president say, It's them or us. That is not what you just heard. President Obama called the attacks here in Paris a setback at one point. He was asked, is it time for you to change your strategy? More or less, he said no. Have you underestimated the abilities of ISIS? More or less, he said no. Do you understand how to defeat ISIS? His response, this is a variation of the same question. President Obama has made it quite clear in that Q&A that lasted more than 45 minutes that he has accepted there are evils in this world and evils in places like Paris, France. And this is something that we all must face today. It's a reality in which the world we live. If you're at home wondering with your own set of anger and your own set of fears about what could happen next, you are not alone, because that's precisely what you feel here in Paris, France. And if you're waiting for clarification on your feelings through that Q&A, you weren't going to get it. The president's strategy, as stated over the weekend, continues as is.
And if Bill Hemmer didn't just put it all out there for you, let me do it again for you. The death of over 100 people throughout Paris was a setback. That setback will not change the course of American policy as it pertains to ISIL, whatever they're called now. And Bill Hemmer put it out there. There's an unsettled feeling out there in the world, in America, of what are we going to do? What's next? We need a response. And I'm not talking about a beating of the chest, we're going to go out and bomb them back to the Stone Age response, but a consideration of at least putting soldiers on the ground. How about that? As Christiane Amanpour brought up in that clip. Why are we not even considering that? President Obama says he's not considering that because he understands that the responsibility he has when he puts American soldiers' lives in danger. And I'm glad he said that, and that's all well and good. But I guarantee you, you ask any active duty soldier if they would stand idly by and allow the forces of terrorism to strike and kill innocent civilians, men, women, and children, anywhere in the world, I guarantee you those soldiers will say, send me there now, and I'll put an end to it. I don't think that the president has the pulse of his military. I don't think him and his advisors have the pulse of what's going on around the world and what people are craving for, and that's leadership. President Hollande, he's showing it. President, Prime Minister, I don't even know. I have to really brush up on my French politics. I have enough hard time of learning American politics and dealing with President Obama and understanding the change in political culture he's trying to bring. But you know what? The right response was, we're going to go get him, and then don't tell us how we're going to get him, and then acting, and then doing it. There are not a lot of airstrikes going on right now over ISIS-held territories. Not as much as compared to what we were doing in either Iraq War or any other military action we had in the Middle East. It's not the same, folks. It's just not the same. And then to hurt matters more, you get idiots on the left, like the clip I'm about to play you from Juan Williams of Fox News. One of the worst statements I've ever heard coming out of any commentator, pundit, prognosticator, whatever you want to call them, in response to the palpable feeling of everyone out there that we must respond when evil rears its ugly head and takes innocent lives. But listen to Juan Williams' reaction here, and I'm so glad that, the Gang on the Five, where this clip comes from, actually step up and challenge him in a very forceful way. Take a listen.
hey, President Obama, guess what? Americans are dying.
Right.
Time to get on it. Time to say my strategy instead of defending your strategy. You're losing 30-0, and it's the fourth quarter. Time to get on it. Change your strategy. Recheck that its strategy is working line and come back with something, I don't know, rephrase it and say we need to retool it and really attack ISIS. That would be helpful.
Americans are dying?
Yeah, well, an American died in that
Oh,
attack.
one American, I said.
Oh, my God, Juan. You can't minimize it.
How many beheadings do we have to see? Remember
James Foley, Steven Sotomayor. Yeah.
But I'm so curious. Americans are dying. I think you're way. Talk about hype. This is what Obama talks about when people start popping off.
You know what, Juan? We're popping off because blood is blood. I don't sit there and say American blood is more than the lives of other people or Christians that are being beheaded or children that are being crucified.
Yes, sure.
Does that matter to you?
Oh, yes, of course.
Because our president's not acting like it matters.
Is that why you're so concerned about what's going on in Africa with Boko Haram?
I am very concerned about that. You know why? Because they've declared allegiance to ISIS, in case you hadn't noticed. And this is part of the ever-increasing caliphate and the complete eradication of borders throughout the world.
So Kimberly wants us to send troops into Africa now?
I'm telling you that I have the will to do whatever it takes. And I am not seeing a president that shares that passion.
Oh, only one American? Oh, well, you're blowing things out of proportion. Excuse me, but we have this whole movement in America called the Black Lives Matter movement, right? I guess French lives don't matter to Juan Williams? We're blowing it out of proportion? Come on, man. You're doing nothing but carrying the water for a failing administration. Carrying the water for failed strategies. Carrying the water for an administration who, hours before this attack that changed the world, said everything's contained when it comes to ISIS. And then you double down by trying to pull a punk racist card by saying, oh, well, you don't care about Boko Haram in Africa. Well, I guess neither did the president and the first lady when they only responded with hashtags and photos. Come on, man. What are you doing? That was the most inhumane, insensitive, disgusting comment I heard throughout this whole situation in Paris and at home dealing with this issue. Come on, you're better than that, Juan Williams. You know what, folks? We're going to take a break. I'm a little disgusted right now after hearing these reactions. The frustration's building a little bit. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break for some commercials real quick. Not a lot, just a couple. When we come back, we're going to come back to discuss domestic policy with former Oklahoma Congressman J.C. Watts and the overreach at home and the failed policies at home that affect you and I coming from the IRS. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines, on Spreaker. We'll be back right after these brief words.
Tired of the same old blah, blah, blah of traditional conservative talk radio?
We know that under the 49% rate, the U.S. economy is booming.
Then tune in to New Media's Talk Monster for grassroots, common sense, conservative talk radio, Red State Talk Radio.
They want to tear down our country. We love our country, and we want to rebuild our country. That's the difference.
WRS Digital, Cleveland, Tennessee.
Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines, and joining me on the line right now, it is a pleasure to be speaking with Oklahoma Congressman, and believe it or not, a great football player I hear in your time as well when you were in college, J.C. Watts. J.C., thank you for coming on the show today. How are you?
Gene, thank you very much for having me. I'm doing well. You mentioned my football career. Most folks are listening to this. If they don't have gray hair, they probably don't remember my football career. You have to have either gray hairs or no hair to remember my football career. So I'm working on more issues today on the economic side of the equation. But nevertheless, I'm delighted to be with you and appreciate you pointing to a little bit of my life in the football arena.
Absolutely. So listen, the main reason we're talking right now is because you are currently working to try to get the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act passed. Why don't you explain to people what that is and tell everyone why this is so necessary and important to discuss right now?
Well, Gene, the Committee to Protect the Freedom of Speech is really dedicated to supporting the right of all American citizens to express themselves through the passage of a piece of legislation that we're working on, that we've been talking to Congress about passing, the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act. And the IRS is trying to, I think, in some respects, threaten people and trying to say we're going to be selective about who we tax, or we're going to tax anything that's given over $12,000. Well, there's two problems with that. One, you freeze if Gene wants to give $25,000 to the Red Cross or Families for Sickle Cell or any other charitable organization out there. He says, okay, I'm not going to give over $12,000 because anything I give over that is not deductible. So I'm not going to give over $12,000. So you don't get the tax relief, and the charitable organization, they lose $13,000 that you intended to give, but you said, well, anything over 12, it's not deductible. So, and the second thing, Gene, the IRS doesn't make those determinations about who gets to write off what or who gets the charitable deduction. That's a congressional responsibility. It's not an administrative responsibility, but it's kind of how the administration has operated over the last 6 years, to say that we're not going to act as a president or administration. We're going to act like a king, and it's just not the right way to do business.
We're talking about 85,000 such organizations like you were talking about, and we're not talking about big charities. We're talking about your local community charities, whether it's your Kiwanis Club or your VFW Hall. These are organizations that, if they come across a donor that really wants to help them, they have to jump on it, because they're not going to see money like this ever again, right, JC?
No question, Gene. Bingo. And or it could be your local church or your local synagogue. It could be some faith organization that you give money to. I think, Gene, what was happening here is that on people on the right and people on the left, they give to charitable organizations, and I think it was probably there was some intent to say we're gonna freeze or we're gonna stifle the giving by these big political donors to charitable organizations, trying to cut their legs out from under them some kind of way. But the fact is, you don't hurt. If you got a donor that can give $100,000, I don't care if he's on the right or if he's on the left or if he's in the middle. If you've got someone that's willing to give $100,000 to a local charity, your local church, your local Red Cross, what happens is they say, okay, we'll give this end of the year. It's a good cause. We'll get a tax deduction for it, so we'll give them $100,000. But under the scenario that we're trying to eliminate, and the bill that we're working on says, no. You're going to get a deduction for whatever you should get. We're not going to stop it at $12,000. So it really does make sense. It's fair for everybody. All American citizens will be treated the same. We've got a very broad coalition of folks. Very seldom do you see, Americans for Prosperity or the Congress of Racial Equality and, the ACLU in the same bed together. But that's how I think how civil this legislation is, to say, let's not allow the IRS to determine who gets a deduction. Let's have Congress move on this. The only fair and unbiased system is one that recognizes that all organizations that follow nonprofit guidelines, they should be treated as such, nonprofit, and they would qualify for the contribution.
You know, JC, as I'm learning more and more about this topic, I see that there's bipartisan support that you talk about in your article that appears on rollcall.com. But the thing that's striking me the most here is okay, I'm going to put my lawyer hat on for a second, because that's what I do in my real life. It seems like this $12,000 setting is kind of arbitrary, and the IRS should not be the IRS should be the scalpel making the decision, like a doctor would be, but the doctor makes the decision on how to use the scalpel. You know what I mean? Why is Congress abdicating their responsibilities to the executive branch, and specifically to an unelected IRS?
Well, Gene, I'm not an attorney, but I would ask that same question, and that's why we're talking to Congress about this, to say, hey, we've seen the administration overreach in terms of immigration, regardless of what a person thinks about immigration or legal immigration or securing the border. Put all that aside. Is that something that should be decided through the administration, or should that be decided by members of Congress? Not by executive order, but by members of Congress. Anybody would say that it should be done by members of Congress. This is the same type of circumstance that says, Congress, step up to the plate, do what the American people elected you to do, and take this out of the hands of the IRS and put it in the hands of the American people, not some bureaucrat, but put it in the hands of the representatives, the 435 House members and the 100 senators, and send it to the president and let the president say yay or nay. I agree with it, or I don't agree with it. But no, that's a perfectly honest, logical question. Congress should deal with this, and again, we've offered up the Fair Treatment to All Gifts Act, which is the legislation that we're asking Congress to deal with.
And I'm glad that this is being put forward. I'm glad that you found people in Congress who are willing to act like congressmen and actually do their job. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, JC, it doesn't matter what party alignment you have at this point. The people that are being hurt by this the most are the people who are in need of the services of these charitable organizations. Most of the time, it's disadvantaged communities, right?
That's right. Gene, you could have a homeless shelter. You could have soup kitchens that qualify for this, as you mentioned earlier. Your local Kiwanis Club or VFW. I give money to my church, and Gene, quite frankly, even if I didn't get a write-off, I would honestly still give to my church. I believe that we are mandated to help and assist those the least of these, and those are the people that's really going to get hurt. Those veterans and the homeless and those who need a couple of hot meals every day, or your local Kiwanis Club or Rotary Club that does great work in Africa surrounding the polio issue that the Rotary Club does. So it's a lot of good organizations out there. The IRS shouldn't arbitrarily say that, hey, anything over $12,000, it's not deductible. If Gene is willing to give whatever you're willing to give, some people, it does encourage them, and it is an inducement because they get a write-off, and we think everybody should be treated fairly. And again, it's the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act that takes the IRS out of the position of determining tax policy.
Absolutely. And the other thing that this does is that it stops big government, because when charities fall by the wayside, government's going to be the one to step in, and everybody wants to have control where their money is going and support charities like this. If government's around taking their place, it's not a good situation for anyone, and it just trickles down in a negative way to those people we were just talking about. JC, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and support HR 1104 if you want people to write their congressman and all that. and also to support you in all your endeavors?
Well, Gene, I would encourage anyone listening, I would encourage them to take a look at the legislation, the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act. This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue, as I said earlier. Americans for Prosperity, that would be relating obviously to the right. Then we've got the 60 Plus Association, Congress of Racial Equality, and then we've got, a coalition of organizations, including that includes the ACLU in the coalition. So that's a pretty broad swath of people from left to right that is supportive of what we're trying to accomplish. And so, if you go to the Committee to Protect Free Speech.com, again, that's the Committee to Protect Free Speech.com, and that'll give you a little more insight on who we are and what we're doing. And we would love for people to call their members of Congress and say, why are you not supporting this, or are you supporting this? And at the end of the day, if they're not, we would hope that they would be encouraged to do so.
It's a rare pleasure to get to talk about something that actually has bipartisan support, and it's a rare pleasure to talk to you, JC. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, Gene, you're very kind to have me on. Thank you, sir.
And it was our pleasure to interview and host former Oklahoma Congressman J.C. Watts. Go to the Committee to Protect Free Speech.com. It's a lot of words, but it's worth going to, folks. The Committee to Protect Free Speech.com. And you know what? We always like to advocate for yourself here behind Enemy Lines, because nobody's going to do it better than you. Nobody knows your life better than you, right? No politician, no boss, no family member. Your life is your own. So why not take control of it? Go out and read H.R. 1104. See if you believe what J.C. Watts and I believe, and that is that we know what to do best with our money. And we believe that private charity is better than government. Let's not limit giving, especially in this time of year. The season of giving is almost upon us. Let's take control, support those organizations that support your communities in the way that you see fit, not the way some pencil pusher at the IRS sees fit. And do you see the connection a little bit from what we were talking about earlier with Paris and foreign policy, folks? It's a little hard to see, but let me bring it to you real quick. Government is saying that we know better. Government's always saying that we know better than you do. That's not true. Government cannot step into your shoes and deal with your 9 to 5. Government cannot step into your shoes and deal with the decisions you have to make with your family. And government sure doesn't know how to spend money properly and efficiently. You do. You know best for you in your life. So why not take control of it? And in this sense, take control of it by reading H.R. 1104. It's the right thing to do, folks. Find something you're passionate about and just go with it. And I hope you're passionate about your own personal welfare and the decisions that you make financially in your life. Before we take our next break, and it's going to be the Al Sharpton break that everybody loves, also from the Washington Free Beacon, I want to thank everybody for listening to this edition of Behind Enemy Lines Radio. I'm Gene Baradelli, and while I got you listening, please go check out www.BehindEnemyLinesRadio.us. That's the blog for this site, for our show, I should say. That's the blog for our show. And while we got you on the internet, check us out on social media. We're on the Facebooks and the Twitters at BEL_radio. And while you're also surfing the net, check out the place where this show was born. And we came from the Brooklyn Young Republicans at www.brooklynYRS.com. We're going to take our last break here before we head into the next topic. We're going to be talking about the Syrian refugee crisis, folks. Everybody's got a lot of opinions on this. We'll be perusing some of them, and I'll give you my own, which may surprise you. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines, will be back after giving some equal time to the Reverend Al Sharpton.
The show will be right back. But first, a word from Al Sharpton.
Good evening, Rev. Thanks
Good evening,
to
Rev.
you, Ed. Is this Groundhog Day 2? We are watching that was Attorney General Eric Holder, ABDs about some Republicans at home are already beating the drums of war. Today, the Pentagon refuted that claim. And he said the American people do not want him to, quote, dwindling, they do not want him dwindling his thumbs. You can get a gig as a contortionist. Intravenous fluids and pills coated with gelatin. We don't leave our women or men in uniform behind. It's a monument to the hubris of Dick Cheney. Representative Raul Labrador. Years of abuse. I personally apologize to Mr. Peebles. Just ask to soon-to-be former Congressman. Democrats are outright jitty. CIA's counterterrorism center. Veteran Affairs Secretary Shinseki. Why do I always mess up his name? Shinseki. I love my critics. I have fun with that.
Politics Nation with the Reverend Al Sharpton starts right now. Good evening, Rev.
Good evening, Dr. Dyson.
But wait, there's more.
And we will much about that be committed. So there's no real conflict. Michael Druniak, including Lincoln himself, Daniel Day-Lewis. Behind Monica Lewinsky, the one and only Trey Songz is here. But Allison Lundergan Grimes, Gina DeJesus, when Gina DeJesus, Tea Party challenger Matt Bibbitt. People don't want to have their Social Security overall. The Republican savior, Mark Rubio's big night. In evolution and Galileo, this whole thing of Galileo, America's changed. Unless IT and Skillets, President Putin doing something similar back in, it won't change this fundamental fact about the GOP. Just how absurd these attacks is. Nearly 6 months after the dangerous traffic jam, the Thai military says, my friend for many years, Ilyana Van Zant. There's nothing there.
And they gave this guy a TV show? Let's get back to our show.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines. And folks, I'm not going to come off as heartless, I hope, in this segment. But we're going to be talking about the refugee crisis coming from Syria. And I think that we can all say, and I think we can all agree, that whether you are Democrat, Republican, if you're an American, I say that you have some modicum of compassion for people who are less fortunate. I like to think so. I like to think the best of America. I see it in our charitable giving. We were just talking about that with J.C. Watts. I see that when a nation has a natural disaster or a tragedy, America is always the first one to step up with aid and services and support. Yeah, that's the best part about America. We will be there for our fellow man. And it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? As my phone goes off and I'm getting messages probably from some fans. But yeah, you know what? That is a beautiful thing. And I like to think that all Americans are in agreement with me on that. At least I hope so. But you know what? Compassion only goes so far. I'm not going to give away all my money and end up on the street myself. I'm not going to donate all my time and not earn money to support my family. I am not going to put myself in danger to save someone who may be in danger. Will I go and get someone else to try to help them? Of course. There are limits with everything in life. And that takes me to this issue of the Syrian refugee crisis. Of course, America should be always open to refugees in need. Notice what I said there. Refugees in need. America should not be so open as to allow those who wish to harm us to take advantage of our kindness and mistake it for weakness. There are these memes going all through the internet that if I have a gumball machine and there are 1,000 gumballs in it and 10 of them are poisonous, are you going to reach your hand in and take some? It's a little over-dramatized, in my opinion. I think that there should be a middle ground. Don't mistake my kindness for weakness. Understand that in order to come here and get the benefit of our protection and our support, we need to know who you are. How about that at least? And as we stand right now, nobody, and I mean nobody, Republican, Democrat, American, international, whatever the case may be, there is nobody out there that can tell me that we know with exact certainty who this person is coming to us asking us for help. Friend or foe. Do we know that? We don't know that. We're never going to know that because the place where they're coming from, and this is typical of all refugee situations, or at least most of them, they're not going to be coming here with documents and passports and proper papers and be able to be vetted. Of course not. When Ellis Island was open, we didn't let everyone in at first. We didn't let people in with communicable diseases. There was quarantine and there was other vetting. We're not just going to let you come in here. Hey, here's your land, here's your house, here's your family, here's some money. Good luck to you. We're not doing that. We never did that. It was never like that. But don't mistake kindness for weakness. And don't be lulled into a guilt trip. Let's listen to some clips right now. Here's an example of a guilt trip, by the way. This is New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio on CNN from earlier, from this week, talking about the moment that he felt the world came together in Kumbaya and said, oh, these poor people, we must do everything. We must let them in. Just let them in. Just let them in.
I know you've seen this photo. It was on the front pages all around the world, this tragic situation with this young boy, I think 3-year-old boy who died, Syrian refugee boy. This photo captured the hearts of the world. We're not going to turn our backs on children and families. It's certainly not the American way. It's not the New York City way. We've been a beacon for immigrants for generations. You can have a strong, careful screening process and still have an open door to people in need.
And how are you going to do that, Mr. Mayor? Peter King doesn't know. The majority member on our Homeland Security Congressional Committee, he doesn't know. He tells us our top security people in Homeland Security and in all higher echelons of government don't know. It's very easy to say that when you're not in control of the situation. Oh, we can have a great vetting policy and we can let everybody in. Let those poor women and children in. Where is your heart? What is wrong with you? Are you heartless? Do you not understand that these are people in need? We should just let them in. Of course we can vet them. We will vet them. Of course we will. Well, how? Nobody knows how. You can't verify any documentation. In many cases, there is no documentation. How are you going to vet them? How are you going to ensure the safety of your own people? And say, the people we're putting here in this area, in your state, they're okay. They're not going to harm you. They are people in need of our love, attention, support, and we should give it to them. That's why 30-some-odd governors are saying, don't put refugees in my state, because they know there are no guarantees in accepting these refugees. Opposite point of view right now, of course, we got to go to the exact extreme opposite. And, of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump. Here's what he had to say about Syrian refugees coming to this country.
Now I hear we want to take in 200,000 Syrians, right? And they could be, they could be ISIS. I don't know. Did you ever see a migration like that? And I'll tell you right now, and I'm putting everybody on notice, and hopefully this gets outside of this room, and I guess it will with all these crazy cameras going back there. I'm putting the people on notice that are coming here from Syria as part of this mass migration, that if I win, they're going back. They're going back. I'm telling you. They're going back.
And again, I'll ask the same question. How? Once they're here, and once they disperse into our country, how are they going back? Is there an identification process of people who and where they're traveling? Are there restrictions on travel that we don't know about? That we're going to be able to know where a given refugee is at a given time? How, Mr. Trump? Two extremes, no way to solve this problem. And I think in the face of these challenges, we need to step back and take a pause. I agree with Paul Ryan on this. We need a pause, folks. The American heart is the biggest in the world. We are the most charitable, giving people in the world. But we should not give to the detriment of our nation. And we'll just leave it at that. Folks, it's about time to wrap things up here behind enemy lines. I want to thank everybody for listening to this show. As we are, as I said at the beginning, independent on Spreaker. And I want to thank all of our affiliates, including WNJC 1360 AM, Philadelphia's Renaissance Station, for picking us up. You're going to be seeing lots of changes here behind enemy lines. Hopefully all for the good as we continue to grow and expand. I want to thank everybody for supporting us. We'll be talking about all these topics. I'm sure we'll be talking about the fallout from France and Paris, and we'll be talking about refugees, because it doesn't look like there's a solution on the horizon, folks, for vetting, for ensuring the safety of our nation, and for making sure that what happened in Paris didn't happen here. I want to thank everybody for listening to this show. It's just about time to shut this puppy down. Keep checking back with us. Check out www.BehindEnemyLinesRadio.us for the latest information on the show, news, views, topics. Next week, we welcome Matt Schlapp from the American Conservative Union onto the show, former campaign advisor to President George W. Bush. He's now the head of CPAC, folks. We're going to be talking a little CPAC news, what they have in store for us for 2016 as we head down the road to the election of the President of the United States in that year. CPAC's going to be exciting, folks. For those of us who know us behind enemy lines, you know that CPAC is our season. I'm looking forward to talking to Matt to find out maybe some of the secret things going on in preparation for CPAC during the presidential election year. And by the way, in case you didn't notice, every first week of every month, we welcome the Media Research Center and Dan Gaynor on the show. We just announced a partnership with them. Really exciting stuff there. I'm a big fan of Newsbusters and Media Research Center. They're going to be partnering with us, one show every month, to talk about liberal hypocrisy and media bias in the coverage of the presidential election in 2016. They're going to be with us once a month. Dan Gaynor has agreed to come on the show once a month. It's going to be some great stuff. I love me some hypocrisy. I love calling people out for that. So much coming in the coming years. And of course, December right around the corner, we'll be talking Buffoon of the Year for 2015. Who you got, folks? Start letting us know who you like. Go to www.BehindEnemyLinesRadio.us. But for right now, it's time to say that we are out of here. Good night, folks.
Our position's been compromised. It's time to roll out. Report for debriefing at www.BehindEnemyLinesRadio.us and look for regular communications via Facebook and Twitter at BEL_radio. You are the resistance. Behind Enemy Lines. Part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. A Rock Radio production. Copyright 2015. Back in 7 days. Out.